So recently, a bunch of unaired pilots found their way online, dating back to the 90s. What I want to do is look at these pilots and determine two things. 1. Did it have potential? And 2. How different would popular culture be if this pilot was picked up for series? Today we're opening up the pilot vault and looking at the pilot for a show called Drew, described as a contemporary take on the character from the iconic Nancy Drew book series. Nancy was aged up to a 30-something NYPD detective where she investigates and solves crimes using her uncanny observational skills, all while navigating the complexities of life in a modern world. Now, I was really excited when this show was announced. I used to love the Nancy Drew books. I read pretty much every Carolyn Keene novel. I was just a big fan of the mystery genre, whether that be Hardy Boys or some Enid Blyton. If there was a mystery story, I was reading it. I also loved the Nancy Drew point-and-click adventure games, mostly because I've never had a good computer, and when I was a kid, those were the only games my computer would run, but I loved them anyway. They're great. So when they announced Drew, a modern adaptation of the character, I was proper looking forward to it. That was until I learned that she was an NYPD detective, and I realised that this is just going to be like every other New York detective show. What's going to be the difference between this and, say, Elementary? Spoilers, Elementary was good. This pilot never aired, but the impression I got was that it was going to use the name Nancy Drew, but be something entirely different. That's not what I wanted. I wanted Nancy Drew as a small town teenager solving crimes. Well, I guess that's what the CW show kind of was, but I can't be bothered with the Riverdale teen drama type shows. It's not for me. Even the Emma Roberts movie from 2009 is better than that show. In the books, Nancy Drew very rarely solved murders. I only remember one case that involved murder that she worked on. Most of the time it was little mysteries such as, oh, what happened to the clock? Or who stole this painting? Or oh, look, a hidden staircase. It was fun. But this show immediately threw that out the window by having a woman jump off a building. Oh, Nancy Drew drives a blue car in this. I love that. She drove a blue car in the books. I remember it vividly. We then meet Sarah Shahi as Nancy Drew. We know this is Nancy because she says her full name.
Yep, that's me. Nancy Drew.
Way to be subtle, writers. Nancy is a Lyft driver, taking her passenger, Tracy, for a drive. But then she swerves her car away and parks up, telling her that she is there for a job interview and psychoanalyzes her. We see how good a detective she is, and this is told through that Sherlock type of observation. And she tells Tracy to go and get herself a new blouse because she spilled some coffee over it. We then learn that Nancy recently resigned from the NYPD because of some controversy. Now, after watching about 3 minutes of this pilot, my suspicions were confirmed. It's Nancy in name only. But is it any good? Well, we'll get to that. She goes home and her friend is watching Nancy's old videos of Bess, the girl who jumped off the building. Her friend is a cop as well, and she's very New York. We get a flashback to Nancy arriving at Bess's crime scene, and it's clear that she hasn't moved on from this case, despite no longer working for the NYPD. We then have some boring conversation about a friend's wedding, which I genuinely couldn't care less about. These two just keep delivering lines like they're super cool, but really it's just boring. I don't know if I'll be able to play a clip for copyright reasons, but I'll try.
Really could use your help on this one. I got shot in the park, only witness is blind. Well, the city is much safer now that I don't have a badge.
A reporter catches Nancy on her way to work, and she's fuming at him because he wrote a bad story about Bess's case. We have some more boring drama that I couldn't care less about. I hope this doesn't carry on for the whole thing because it's so dull. There's more empty, meaningless drama in this than there is in the CW show. Nancy goes to visit the detective from the scene prior, which is weird because we're doing this again. More boring marriage talk. The detective's fiance is helpful because she plays the dumb character who goes, I don't understand. So they Nobody can explain the police acronyms to us. We then meet Nancy's dad, who was always in the old stories and click and point computer games. Her dad is worried about her because she's too invested in this case. Oh yeah, in this version of the show, Nancy was adopted. Not really sure why they made that change. It was probably to set up a future storyline where we met her real dad, but we'll never see that. I'm sure it would have been great. He says sarcastically. She then gets a text from the detective that says that Bess was pregnant when she died. Oh no! This means... Well, I don't really know what this means, but they seem to think it means something. And now they believe that she didn't jump off the building, she was killed. Really, it doesn't mean anything, but they need something to be all dramatic about, so yeah. There's more boring talk about this boring case. They then have a scene where they have to hack a password, and they keep guessing, and eventually they guess it right. Boring. They find out that Bess was taking antidepressants before she died by going to her apartment. Wait, I'm confused. Bess unalived herself. I hate using that term, but I've got to say it. I don't want that yellow monetization symbol. But Bess unalived herself 6 months before this pilot takes place. Enough time for Nancy Drew to quit the NYPD and start being a Lyft driver. So how? In 6 months. Didn't they once check her apartment? It's stupid, I'm fuming. These are either the laziest detectives on the planet or the laziest writers on the planet. I think it's a mix of both. Nancy and her detective friend keep working on the case, which really shouldn't be happening. Nancy no longer works for the NYPD. She shouldn't be involved in this. I know Nancy in the books always butted in where she didn't belong, but that's because she was a kid. Surely this is a mistrial waiting to happen. The second the defense team learn that she was getting involved in this investigation while she wasn't working for the NYPD, it'll be thrown out of court. There's a knock on the door and the police are there. They had reports of a break-in from a neighbour who claims that people were visiting Bess's apartment at all hours of the day because she was a drug dealer. Dun dun dun. This is obviously news to them, but this is thrown aside in the very next scene, where it's revealed that she wasn't dealing drugs. She was instead paying for people to go to rehab. Easy mistake to make. Don't you hate it when you're a saint and help people go to rehab and all your neighbours think that you're dealing drugs? Stupid show. Nancy goes to the precinct, and when she's asked if she's back, she says something really mean and unnecessary.
Are you back?
Just back to see this loser.
What was the need in there? It's so uncalled for. We have some more melodrama, which is pretty boring, as you know. It ends up with Nancy storming off and going to sulk.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
There is so much crap I've not even mentioned here, but it's honestly not worth wasting your time over. It's so dull and unnecessary. I very nearly jumped this up to 2 times speed to try and get through it, but you know, I've already committed to it, so let's just watch it at normal speed. Come on. We then go to River Heights, which I know from the book to be Nancy's hometown. I remember in the game Alibi in the Ashes, and the town hall burnt down and she was the prime suspect. It's not important why she went to her hometown. They could have very easily cut it and we wouldn't have lost anything. Her dad is pregnant. Well, not her dad. Her dad's girlfriend is pregnant. I'm sure it would have led to future storylines, but we'll never see that because this was left at the pilot stage for obvious reasons. Nancy's outfit here reminds me of Claire from Resident Evil 2. Not relevant, but I figured I'd mention it. We have some really boring stuff with this dude and Nancy. Let's skip it. We then find out that Bess was killed by the woman who has been in this story for like 2 shots. I don't think I've even mentioned her in this video because she was that unimportant. That is not how you do a mystery story. Agatha Christie said that the fundamental rule of telling a mystery story is that you can't just have a character appear and then go, it was them all along. You have to establish a character, otherwise the reader will feel cheated like I do right now. The only redeeming part of this pilot was when they found a staircase hidden behind a wall, and Nancy Drew says, Really? A hidden staircase? Get it? Like the second book? I appreciated the reference anyway. You know what's mad? How those silly indie point-and-click computer games have the best characterization of Nancy of any adaptation. Why do studios keep failing to capture her? It's ridiculous. So, why did this show not get past the pilot stage? Well, it's because CBS passed on the show in favour of the legal drama Doubt, which was created by the same producer team and also had a female lead. I think they just looked at the two pilots and decided that Doubt had more potential. For the record, Doubt was cancelled after 2 episodes, so great move there. I really didn't enjoy this pilot, and I say that as a big Nancy Drew fan. It was boring and predictable every step of the way. And now I completely understand why it was left at the pilot stage. What a shame. They wasted this character with such a dull story. I'm glad that they never made more of this. I'm sticking this near the bottom, right next to Queen Bee, because that's where it belongs. This show was more insulting than the shows I usually talk about on Pilot Vault, because they squandered a character who genuinely means so much to me. This is the most annoyed I've ever been on Pilot Vault. Even Mr. Red irritated me less than this. At least in that, I could laugh at how ridiculous it all was. Right, do you want me to talk about more Unaired pilots? If so, leave a comment below telling me what one I should watch next. And subscribe, help us reach 4K. Right, I'll let you go. Bye.